The silhouettes outside its parliament represent children held in Australia's refugee prisons. This week, Australia's Immigration Minister has given a rare interview to talk to Al Jazeera to explain why he believes such measures are necessary. Turning back boats at sea and deporting refugees who do reach Australia to remote Pacific islands as a deterrent to others, Peter Dutton says, means Australia can be generous when it comes to resettling other refugees through an orderly process run by the UN. But Dutton does seem to leave the door open to the resettlement of some of those held on Nauru in New Zealand, something he has previously ruled out.
Nauru, as you say, is a sovereign country. If, as a sovereign country, it decided to accept New Zealand's offer of resettling some of the refugees in New Zealand, would you be happy with that?
Well, that's an issue between Nauru and New Zealand.
So you would have no objection if a deal were done between those two countries?
No, but let me make this very important qualification, because we have had people smugglers that have tried to send boats across the top of Australia to New Zealand before. Let me make this very important point, that people, if they've sought to come by boat, it doesn't matter where they're settled, in whatever third country, New Zealand or somewhere else, they will not be coming to Australia at any point.
But possible resettlement in New Zealand is a subtly different position to the minister's previous ones.
What we think it means is the Australian government is slowly coming to the realisation that the prolonged warehousing of refugees on Manus Island and Nauru is simply not sustainable.
Dutton rejects as outrageous comparisons some have made between Australia's offshore prisons and Guantanamo Bay.
And I think, frankly, you deliberately or otherwise attempt to tarnish the reputation of Australia when it's unwarranted.
These aren't my words. Australia's Guantanamo Bay is something that a respected human rights lawyer has said, and a paediatrician who worked on Nauru as well.
But again, Andrew, with respect, if you're going to repeat those sort of emotive claims, I'd ask you to back them up. I mean, on what basis do you make that claim?
That this is effectively a holding centre for people who are pretty much controlled. Their fates are controlled by Australia, and yet they are in another country where Australia has power but not responsibility.
But how does this equate to the images that you're trying to conjure up in people's minds of Guantanamo Bay? I mean, I think it is an outrageous suggestion, to be perfectly frank, and I'd ask people to look at the facts as opposed to the emotion and some of the misinformation.
But for Judith Reen, who worked as a teacher on Nauru, that rings hollow.
I can see why people draw that parallel. I can see why people call it Australia's Guantanamo Bay. The detention is indefinite. The people do not have freedom of movement. They are living in substandard conditions. In fact, if anything, it's worse because we have small children in there.
The minister rejects such claims. He's spoken out because he feels his country is unfairly maligned. Andrew Thomas, Al Jazeera, Sydney.